Well, hello there, and welcome. My name is Brandon, and this is Spooky Folklore. Well, good morning, evening, or afternoon. Welcome to the very first podcast of Spooky Folklore. I'm your host, Brandon Smith. And we're going to have a good day today. I feel it. Now, what we usually do is we'll start off with a cryptid of the week, and then we'll move forward from there with the folklore tale. I love folklore. Folklore is just, every generation has it. Every place in the world has their own idea of certain things, and some may be spin-offs of others. Truly is awesome. Further ado, let's get down for COTW, shall we?
Cryptid of the Week.
The Loveland Frogman. Now, if you're from Ohio, like myself, then you've already heard of Loveland Frogman. But if you don't, he's pretty much the cryptid, one of the cryptids of folklore of Ohio. Now, the Loveland Frogman is known to live in Claremont County. The creature lives in a temperature forest and is able to survive in the cold winters of the region without having to hibernate at all. The frogman apparently has a physical ability to use sticks like tools. However, they have an ability, they can use those sticks to emit sparks, like a wand. This could mean the frog has the ability to control electricity in some kind of way. Now, those ambitious anomalies have shocked and terrified both businessmen, farmers, and police officers, and remain one of the most intriguing cryptozoologist mysteries in the United States. Now, here comes one of the stories. I'd like to ask and see about this. But, by the way, I've been here because it's like where I work around. And I've actually took my lunch before. In Isabella Lake, where it's been known to be spotted. Anyways. Approximately 3:30 a.m., an unnamed businessman claimed to have witnessed 3 bipedal reptilian entities congregating by the side of the road. The man pulled his car to the curb and observed these creatures for what is estimated to be about 3 minutes. During that time, he noticed that these strange beings stood between 3 and 4 feet tall, were covered with leathery skin, and had webbed hands and feet. The most distinguishing characteristic, however, was their distinctively frog-like heads, which the man claimed bore deep wrinkles where their hair should have been. Just as the man was about to steal away, one of the creatures suddenly held what the witness could only describe as a wand, like Harry Potter, above its head. The anonymous source further claimed that sparks spewed all of the end of the device. Thus begins the bizarre legend of the Loveland Frogmen, which is weird because they pronounce it Loveland Frogmen, and some people say it's Loveland Frogman. So is there one? Is there more? This tale would be fascinating enough if it ended there, but the 2 most significant encounters in this case are indeed 2 of the most significant encounters in cryptozoologists were yet to have come. At about 1 a.m., March 3rd, 1972, nearly 17 years after the first report, a police officer, who understandably chose to remain anonymous, probably because he's embarrassed, was traveling alongside the river heading toward Loveland, where he saw something that would forever change his life. The officer claimed that he was driving slowly due to the substantial amount of ice on the road when he saw that he looked like a dog by the curb. Suddenly, the animal darted in front of the cruiser, forcing the officer to slam on his brakes in order to avoid a potential collision with the creature. Once the police cruiser came to a halt, his headlights fell upon the prone animal. At this point, the officer described something that seems literally too bizarre to be true. In the span of a second, this crouched, frog-like creature stood on two legs, stared back at the policeman, then scrambled over the guardrail and scurried down the embankment, finally disappearing into the Ohio River. I mean, so far it's believable. The officer in question described the creature as being 3 to 4 feet tall and weighing in the area between 50 and 70 pounds. He also claimed that its skin had leathery texture and the animal's features resembled those of a frog or a lizard. Another officer investigated the scene later that evening. He saw no sign of the creature, but reported that there were distinct scratch marks on the guardrail where the animal crossed. I don't know about you, but I'm looking at concept art right now, and it's hilarious looking. So I'm just saying, what? It kind of serves no, it's not going to scare me. Like in real life, I mean, of all the cryptids in the world, Yeti, Bigfoot, I mean, come on, this ain't, Banshee, this ain't going to be scaring me as a frog. Anyways. The second sighting occurred 2 weeks later, while police officer Mark Matthews had an encounter of his own. According to the report, Officer Matthews, while driving into Loveland, spotted what he believed to be an injured animal lying on the pavement. It's because a previous policeman hit it. Anyways, Matthews climbs out of his cruiser with the intention of removing the carcass from the already ice-slicked roads, when the creature abruptly launched upwards into a crouched position. Taken aback by the frogman's reptilian visage. Visage? Forget that word. Matthews unholstered his revolver and took a shot at the creature. Bang, bang. Which then proceeded to hobble over the side of the road and step over the guardrail, all the while keeping a watchful eye on the trigger-happy officer. Trigger-happy officer. Matthews' Frogman matched the first officer's description down to the very last detail, with the exception of a tail, which was absent in early reports. He grew a tail. In the years which followed these events, Officer Matthews somewhat changed his tale. He now claims that the animal in question was nothing more than a large reptile which escaped from its owner. Nice covering yourself, Matthew. That's what you get for putting your name down. He further insists that the only reason he shot at the creature was to help confirm a fellow officer's story, a story which was, of course, being met with predictable skepticism by their superiors. Whether or not Matthew's change of heart was inspired by ridicule, yes, or the fading memory of an event which he was 30 years removed from, the fact remains that his own testimony counter indicates his later retraction in a 2001 email interview. Officer Officer Mark Matthews, now retired, explained that the incident was habitually blown out of proportion. He stated that it was no monster. It was not leathery or had wet, matted fur. It was not 3 to 5 feet tall. It did not stand erect. The animal I saw was obviously some type of lizard that someone had a pet. Either it got too large for its aquarium, escaped by accident, or they simply got tired of it. It was less than 3 feet in length, ran across the road, and was probably blinded by my headlights. It presented no aggressive action. Matthews attempted to shoot the creature in order to back up the account of his partner's sighting a few nights prior, but the lizard escaped, most likely to die from its injury or from the bitter freezing cold. Now, a frogman was spotted also in mid-August 2016 by Sam Jacobs and his girlfriend while they were playing Pokemon Go in Cincinnati. The location of the sighting cast doubt on its authenticity. And I do remember that one, by the way. I do remember getting a Channel 5 update that talked about a two couple playing Pokemon and seeing Frogman. So that's all we have on probably I gotta stop looking. Here's some of the comments. I want to hug him. Don't we all? Dart. Have poison on the outside. Is there a Frogman admin on this wiki? I'm just curious. There's the Loveland Frog has 5 sightings. 1 in 1954, 2 in 1972, and 1 in 2016. That's only 4. Anyways, we're going to proceed onward now to our actual folklore tale, which will be a lot more interesting than the Loveland Frogman. One of the folklore that we're going to talk about, I'm not going to lie to you, this is pretty creepy. You ready? Now, Cropsey, pretty much like the boogeyman. Now, this story of a nightmare come to life. Once, Cropsey was just an urban legend, the boogeyman of Staten Island in New York City. He was rumored to be a madman, an escaped mental patient with a hook for a hand who hunted children and dragged them back to the tunnel system that lay under the abandoned ruins of the old Seaview Hospital, a former tuberculosis sanitarium. Parents used Cropsey, not Bill Cosby. Parents used Cropsey to frighten their children into being good and staying near home. After all, Cropsey could be anywhere, waiting to strike. Older siblings would tell Cropsey stories at night to terrify their younger brothers and sisters. As if that wasn't enough, one summer camp variation of the tale of Cropsey inspired a 1981 slasher movie, The Burning. The cult classic is surprisingly faithful to the tale of the Staten Island Scouts once swapped over toasted marshmallows. It features a once respectable man named George Cropsey who goes insane after a prank gone wrong leaves him disfigured and begins killing unsuspected summer campers with an axe. But then, in the 1980s, the children of Staten Island had even more reason to fear their local boogeyman. Cropsey had come to life in the form of an actual madman who really didn't hunt children. Oh, scare you on this one. Who actually really did hunt children. Soon the urban legend would be unmasked as Andre Rand. Rand worked as a janitor at the Willowbrook State School on Staten Island, a place whose name alone has the power to frighten adults and children alike. The institution, built as a respite for children with intellectual disabilities, was revealed to be a living hell in the 1970s, although authorities wouldn't close the school until 1987. The children there have been subjected to rampant sexual abuse and corporal punishment, and severe overcrowding led to unsanitary conditions. It was also home to what has been called one of the most unethical medical experiments on children in the United States. In the name of hepatitis research, medical staff intentionally injected healthy children with the virus, many of whom became severely ill as a result. The public wasn't aware of the conditions inside the school, given that many of the children inside had sadly been abandoned by their parents, and foster care system was leading to little accountability. In 1972, young Gerardo Rivero published an exposed revealed the horrific conditions inside the Willowbrook State School and ignited a national scandal. School was officially closed 15 years later, and the negative publicity contributed to the successful passage of federal civil rights legislation that protects the mentally disabled and other people who have been institutionalized. Now, that same year, Andre Rand, former janitor of the School of Horrors, was arrested in connection with the disappearance of Jennifer Schwieger, a 12-year-old girl with Down syndrome. At the time, Rand was homeless and living in a makeshift campsite on the grounds of the abandoned school not far from Seaview Hospital that was closely tied to the Cropsey legend. Over a month after his disappearance, searchers found Jennifer's body in a shallow grave on the desolate school grounds where the drifter was living. Rand was charged with murder. By the time Rand already had a long rap sheet of crimes against children, 1969, he was sentenced to 16 months in jail for the attempted sexual assault of a 9-year-old. 1983, he went to jail after kidnapping a bus full of children from the local YMCA and driving them to an airport. And though there wasn't enough physical evidence to charge him, police already suspected him in the disappearances of at least 4 other Staten Islanders coming back from then a decade more. Alice, 5, who disappeared in 1972, Holly Ann Hughes, 7, who disappeared in 1981 and was last spotted with Rand on the day of her disappearance, 11-year-old Ty Heath Jackson, who disappeared in 1983, and Hank Gaffurio, who mentally disabled 22-year-old who was last seen with Rand at a diner in 1984. To this day, none of the bodies have been found. The jury of Rand's case could not reach a verdict on the murder charge, and there was not enough physical evidence of direct involvement in Jennifer's death. However, they found him guilty of kidnapping, for which Rand received a sentence of 25 years in prison. Rand would have been eligible for parole in 2008, but in 2004, new evidence came back to light, linking him to the disappearance of Holly Ann Hughes. A fellow inmate took notes of conversations he had with Rand and would later discussed in detail of his abduction of the girl. Rand was convicted on a second kidnapping charge and given another 25-year sentence. He will not be eligible for parole until 2037, when he will be 93 years old. Now, how this ties together with Cropsey. Rand's story and that of Cropsey continues to fascinate and horrify tri-state residents to this day. Filmmakers like Joshua Zeman and Barbara Pinocchio grew up on Staten Island and listened to the terrifying Cropsey stories where they were children. As adults, their curiosity led them to dig deeper into the urban legend of Cropsey and the real cases of the island's missing children. Their chilling documentary, Cropsey, explores the bizarre case of the boogeyman who seemed to come to life. Now, I want to tell you a story now. This is a story that was told to a 19-year-old, but they told him in the ages of 8 and 9, when they were young. He was younger. But anyways, this is what they call a New York ghost story, but it's about Cropsey. It's all about Cropsey in New York. Okay. Now, I'm phrasing from him. So when I was 8, we had a campfire for my age group of the sleepaway camp. I went to one of the girls and was going to tell scary stories. This girl decided she was going to tell the story of Cropsey. And everyone knew the story, had heard something about it, but I did not know it yet. It is famous in New York State, and people thought it was extra scary because it was so close to home. So the story of Cropsey has a bunch of different versions, but this was the one I told. On a highway in upstate New York, there was a man driving alone. Something hit the man's car. Something being of, or deer, jumped in front of his car, and he ended up in a wreck because of that unknown object or person. And he ended up being severely disfigured in the car wreck, and nobody ended up coming to help him because his car was the only car on the road in a rural area. So he dragged himself out of the car and into the woods to try, heal, instead of kind of just didn't die, but remained severely disfigured. He then ventured amongst the woods and remained severely hurt, living amongst the trees, and ended looking like somewhat of a demon. He would just wander around the woods, and then this part is the true part. Small rural towns in upstate New York started to notice that children were disappearing into the woods. The children would either be found dead or they were found alive, but they were said to be lured into the woods by a man named Cropsey. And the children that were found dead, or the children that would come back, would be disfigured in some type of way. A lot of the children begin with when they're born with some type of disability. Throughout time, it has become an urban legend or myth that in a lot of disappearing children cases, the name Cropsey continues to be used or brought up. The state isn't sure if there's ever was a man named Cropsey, or if over time this has been different serial killers or criminals, murderers that hide or play into this legend and story. I think that I would imagine that he looked or acted like some sort of zombie. Do you know the horror movie, Mama? Okay. I don't know. I think it just plays into some sort of witch-like or zombie figure that should have died, but didn't, but is kind of dead roaming around in the woods. I do not know. He went from a regular man in a car wreck to desiring flesh or children, so something had to happen. I think this is a ghost story, but I would use the word zombie to try and describe him. I feel like it's like the way I have heard around a campfire telling ghost stories, and it qualifies and feels like being undead as being a ghost. He definitely qualifies as undead. I believe that there has been disappearances attributed to someone named Cropsey, but I don't necessarily believe the whole bit of a man becoming Cropsey. I don't believe in ghosts like the way that I don't know if you really see them, but I feel like I want to believe in ghosts because that's a way I think you can be in contact with the dead. Like when you hear those, this person's crazy. Okay, this has nothing pertaining. This person's story ended up toward the end being like garbage, but who cares? So, the more of the story is, we're talking about Cropsey, who's pretty much, from what I understand, and I've watched documentary, not the Cropsey, but it's Killer Urban Legends or Killer Legends or something like that. That's when I got first introduced to him. But Cropsey's pretty much the boogeyman of Staten Island, so I'm assuming a ghost story. I've seen the complex, the old school, supposedly where he was actually, Randolph, the janitor. So anyways, so the story really goes, at least how I interpret it, is that he was a janitor. He did a bunch of bad things with the, kids, whatnot, killed them, kidnapped, whatever. And then he gets, sent to jail or prison. And then supposedly how it goes is escape prison. Or he didn't make it to prison because he was not mentally fit to be in prison. So he was in a mental institution, escaped the mental institution, and loves to go back around that school. I would believe it'd be a way to prevent kids from wandering, away from the house to go to that school. But legend has it that Cropsey to this day is still around that school in general, or in the woods around the school. But it was pretty good. It was pretty good folklore. I enjoyed it a lot. But that is all the time that we have right now. All the time that we have. I appreciate you listening, and please don't forget, comment or message me on Twitter, which is @SpookyFolkTales. I'll have it in the description as well, but Spooky Folktales. Send me, if you like anything, or if you want to hear something else, or maybe you want to DM me about your folklore of where you live at, and I'll talk about it in one of my episodes. If you feel so inclined to leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on, definitely helps me out a lot. Shows me if I'm going on the right path. But until then, stay safe, know your area, and I hope you enjoyed yet another episode of Spooky Folklore.